Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, as always, using the old-fashioned telephone, 888-630-9625, or the new-fashioned one, 888-630-WMAL. You have a rotary phone? It works. You can get to us that way. The left loves its conspiracy theories. They really do. They say things like this.
We know that these vaccines work, right? We know when people stay up to date with their vaccine, that works.
That works, just like those masks. They work. Those little plastic barriers that you hang inside of pharmacies or in McDonald's, they work. They keep you safe. Or they say things like this.
Problem is that hard drives can be manipulated by Rudy Giuliani or Russia.
Well, what's the evidence that happened?
Well, there is actual evidence of it, but the point is
There's
not
no
the same
evidence for
thing.
it, so you're engaging in a conspiracy
I'm glad
theory.
you agree.
Yeah. You're engaging in conspiracy theory. The left engages in a lot of these, so many that there's a name for it. It's called Blue Anon. And my next guest has written a book, on this phenomenon. It's called The Rise of Blue Anon, How the Democrats Became a Party of Conspiracy Theorists. It arrives on November 19th. You can pre-order it now wherever you find books. David Harsanyi is here. David, good to have you back with us, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Also, I should point out David's a senior editor at the Federalist, a fabulous website. David, Blue Anon, tell me about these poor souls who get tricked into believing conspiracy theories. What's going on?
Well, I think the most of the time the media will tell you, or people will act as if the right wing is the only, are the only people who will believe in conspiracy theories or adopt this kind of paranoid style of politics. But the truth is that the left does as well, and I argue at least that it's far more dangerous because these conspiracy theories are usually laundered through media, polished up, calibrated to be plausible, upheld by so-called experts, and spread by institutions that we're supposed to trust.
Yeah.
So they are much more effective, like the Russia collusion hoax, for instance, or all the stuff that happened during COVID, because in the past there was trust in these people, but I'm not sure that's going to be the case moving forward.
No. And so actually, if you compare the way that people are skeptical towards our government or towards the opposing political party, the right has had a lot of success, actually, in being skeptical. So when the right says, hey, we think FEMA may be actually being politically biased in terms of who it's helping, and then you get this report that, actually a FEMA official was straight up telling her employees not to go to the homes of Trump supporters, well, that's evidence that suspicion was correct. Or if you look at people saying, hey, we think that the virus likely came from that lab in Wuhan, China, and then the left says, no, you're not allowed to talk about that. There's no way that happened. That's a racist conspiracy theory. It turns out to be correct. So in some sense, insofar as that there are theories, one side kind of has a track record of being correct.
It's true. And actually, I start the history of my book with Hillary Clinton going on TV in 1998 to say that there was a vast right conspiracy against her husband, who had not had an affair with an intern. But obviously there was. It's almost like a conspiracy theory about a conspiracy theory to undermine and to try to misdirect. It's almost an act of projection. And Hillary and the Clintons were behind, obviously, the Russia collusion thing as well. So they're not new to this game. But I think, they've been successful on that front. And let me give you another quick example, election denialism. The right's always accused of that. But if you go back to 2000, ask a Democrat today who won the 2000 election, who was, they'll tell you it was stolen from Gore. 2004, they engaged in this similar kind of thing. People might forget that almost every major Democrat said that election, that something was wrong with the Ohio machines, that it had to be investigated.
Yeah, the Diebold election machines.
Exactly. They've been doing this for a long time. You see some of that bubbling up now. I think Trump probably won, his victory is so by such a wide margin that it's going to be a little difficult, but you see it, and they're just as likely to engage in that sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, they're actively trying to steal the Pennsylvania Senate race as we speak. There's still, still shenanigans going on right now on the left. But we'll see. Hopefully that settles out and we see Dave McCormick in the Senate just fine, as the voters intended. But when you mentioned a moment ago, I think this is a fascinating feature of this, that the left has institutions who help polish up their conspiracy theories. It does seem like that a lot of institutions are so captured by the ideology that they're willing to go along with literally anything. An example of that is like the New York Times, I think, had a report recently indicating that there were studies showing that sex change operations being performed on children didn't show any signs of long-term success for the child. And they were reticent to share that data in public for fear of the political implications. I mean, how routine is that impulse?
Yeah, it tells you something about the fall of higher education, the fall of research institutions, and how a kind of I would say an ideology corrupts free thinking, and a lot of that actually does drive this paranoid style of politics that the left practices. But yeah, I mean, and they don't, hiding information in that way. The right is always accused of doing that, but it's actually the left that does it. I mean, they do it all the time, and I think it's a really destructive impulse.
Yeah, it really is. And then, of course, the media carry the water. Another example that I can think of is in the lead up to the 2020 election, the left was running wild with a theory that the United States Postal Service was going to steal the election for Donald Trump. You remember this? And they were sending out photos of piled up mailboxes, and they say, look, it's already happening.
So there were people chaining themselves to mailboxes in California, the central Trumpist area. But the funny thing, or not the funny thing, the sad thing about it is, of course, this kind of thinking, isn't just on the left. It happens all over. But Nancy Pelosi had an emergency session of Congress when that mail thing was going on. She knew very well it was a conspiracy theory, but there are a lot of credulous people out there. So what happens is, as with the Russia collusion thing, you have cynical people who spread conspiracies because they know there are a lot of gullible voters and partisans who either want to believe it or are stupid enough to believe it. And the mail, that mail event that you just mentioned was one of them.
How when you look at the role that social media plays in all of this, how do you view it? I tend to think that the institutions you just mentioned, especially legacy media, the fact that they're so captured, if we were to only rely on them for the dissemination of information, people would be much more misled than they are right now. How do you view social media and its role in all of this?
I mean, I think to some extent, it's a pretty dark and terrible place where a lot of conspiracy theorists can get together, live in bubbles, and it makes things worse. On the other hand, if you have a media that you can trust, that covers up the president's, failing acuity and physical strength and things like that, then you need, and it's important to have an open, free social media where people can do fact checking, where people can ask questions. So I think on the whole, it's probably better. I mean, we had, when I was growing up, there were basically 3 channels, and they were gatekeepers, and they told you whatever they wanted to, and you had, it was very difficult to push back or to have a discussion about anything. Now you can, and I think in the long run, that's probably better for America.
One other phenomenon that I've noticed about the left that I think is different from the right is I feel like the left is more siloed in terms of where they get their information from than the right is. Because much of conservative media, David Harsanyi, involves talking about what lefty media is saying and then telling you what the truth is. The left media has tried to get by for years without even really acknowledging that the right even has media institutions. And to the extent that they engage with it at all, it's just kind of a vicious form of slander.
And how many real policy debates have we had recently? We don't. The left doesn't debate. They just accuse you of sedition, racism, and misogyny. And that started, with racism with Obama, I think. And then now it just became a shortcut and easy for people to accuse you of something or slander you, etc.
Yeah.
But I think you're right about the left media. And I think his name is Scott Jennings on CNN.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I have it right.
Yes.
But he'll bring up something and everyone will be just shocked and horrified that they'll be surprised that such a thing even exists, that such an argument exists. And that just shows the siloed nature of left-wing media. And I think that's completely true. Very few people on those channels anymore that make a case for conservatism, much less Donald Trump or something like that.
Yeah, in fact, I think Scott Jennings mentioned in the last few days, they were talking about, how could you deport this many people? How could you deport this many people? And Scott Jennings was like, well, Obama deported 2.5 million people, and nobody's really raising a stink about that. The whole panel looked at him like, what? Is that even possibly true? And so, in other words, they exist in this unfortunate sort of untested, fact-free environment, and it's better when we have actual debates.
I think so. I think it was on Bill Maher. I forget who was on there, but someone mentioned that gender affirming care was actually, he explained what that really was, and everyone was oohing and eyeing in the crowd. And Bill Maher's like, no, it's actually true. So, yeah, I think that they're not getting all the information, and that's a big problem because you can't debate when you don't know there's a debate going on.
Do you have any optimism about this issue, David Harsanyi, these left-wing conspiracy theorists, people perhaps being breaking out of the spell? I have seen a couple of social media videos in the wake of the election last week. And I don't know if they're actors or not, but I assume they're genuine left-wingers. They kind of have the look, to be honest with you. And they'll say stuff like, something, leading into this election, I kind of believed everything I was reading and hearing. I thought there was like wild support for Kamala. I had no idea that she wasn't this well supported. And now I'm starting to think that there's a reason people support Trump. And in other words, like last week, was it in any way an eye-opening experience for the average Mark in Blue Anon?
Probably for some, but I still think all the incentives are wrong in media. When Donald Trump becomes president, getting hysterical over everything he does will probably bring eyeballs to places like MSNBC and CNN. There is not a big upside in having serious, tempered debate. I hope I'm wrong. I wish they wish there were an upside to it, but I still think about this. You have newspapers where the staff runs the paper. If there's a differing opinion on the New York Times editorial page, the staff rebels and the editorial page editor gets fired.
Yes.
It's very hard to change that culture just all of a sudden. Like I was watching MSNBC after the election. They didn't ask themselves, was it wrong to call Trump Hitler? They asked themselves, why are all these people voting for Hitler? I think it's difficult to change that culture.
Yeah, it is. And you hope at some point the business implications catch up with them because I see Mediaite has a piece up this week. MSNBC's ratings have cratered in the wake of the election. Thursday's total average daily viewers on Fox News came in at about 2.6 million. Meanwhile, MSNBC brought in just 596,000 total viewers, and they've dropped to 71,000 in the critical demo. 71,000 people? That's nothing. So MSNBC and CNN cratering right now. So if maybe in the end the market will win out, David Harsanyi. But in the meantime, I hope the market wins out with your book becoming an out-of-control success. Thank you very much for joining us today.
That. Thank you.
That's David Harsanyi, the author of The Rise of Blue Anon. Please pre-order it. It's a fun book. David's a great guy. To the phones we go. Line 3, Mike calling in from Sunshine now. Mike, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Oh, Vince, thanks for taking my call. Hey, the left, I hear them saying, where's our Joe Rogan? We need a Joe Rogan. And I go, you had Joe Rogan, but you shooed him away with COVID and trans stuff, Fallon Fox fighting in the MMA. And then on one side of the ledger is Joe Rogan, talk radio, and Fox. On the other side of the ledger is NBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NPR, PBS. And, what are they talking about? And, they've been moralizing for so long, calling Donald Trump bad. And he was so uniquely bad that they had to give up journalism and lose their credibility, maybe for ratings, but they've lost those as well.
Yeah, and it's funny actually, Mike, as you lay out all of that accurately. One thing I remember through the years that the media, the trick that the press likes to play, is they'll say, "What are conservatives complaining about on social media?" The most popular people on social media are conservatives. They'll screech. What are they complaining about? How can they be suppressed? And then they'll point to somebody like our colleague Dan Bongino, who's had a lot of success online for many years, and they say, "Look, he's one of the most popular guys on social media." Yes, that's true, but here's what we're telling you. The message that Dan is delivering is only a couple of people who are doing it really well, and they're having some success. Meanwhile, the rest of the media is ubiquitous and singing from the same exact hymnal. So, yeah, maybe CBS doesn't get as much attention as Dan, but CBS has a choir of voices all singing the same exact garbage. It's CBS, it's NBC, it's ABC, it's the New York Times, it's the Washington Post. The list is endless, and so everywhere you turn, they're all delivering you the same distorted talking points, Mike. And which is why when people are out there and they're looking for an alternative, they're turning to guys like Dan. They're turning to this show and they're saying, okay, finally, I get some sense of what's actually going on in the world.
They want the message to be monolithic. And when anyone like Jan Bongino or this radio station says something, they go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We want to be controlling information that the consumer listens to. That, like your prior just talk a couple minutes ago, there used to be ABC, CBS, and NBC. That was it. Walter Cronkite spoke, and you believed him. And that's no longer the case.
That's true.
And that's the world we live in now. And it sucks to be them, but they now have to compete in the market of news and ideas.
Well, they've devalued their currency so much by lying to us so frequently that we don't believe them when they yell that there's a wolf. What wolf? I don't think you're right about that. I think you're lying to me. I think you're the wolf, actually. I think that's how that story ends now. Hey, thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate the call. Smart. Coming up here on the program, we've got a lot to get to. A lot of good picks from President Trump. More on the way. Was Oprah paid by Kamala Harris? The documents say yes. $1 million to Oprah? I heard somebody compare it to the Fire Festival of political campaigns. You don't want to be the Fire Festival of political campaigns. That's bad news. It's all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We've been talking about the scandal at FEMA for a couple of days now in terms of just the information that we've learned thanks to the reporting of the Daily Wire, that FEMA officials were telling underlings, hey, avoid the homes of storm victims who have Trump signs out front. Don't go there. And then they would come along and they would say, we didn't do it. We followed your orders. And they'd fill out officially in the system that they would skip a home and they would denote the reason they skipped it was because there was a Trump sign out front. And it was not the result of a conversation. They didn't knock on the door and then find some sort of surly person like, hey, stay away from me. I don't want anything to do with FEMA. They straight up skipped them. They never even began the conversation with these American citizens who were trying to pick up the pieces in the wake of these awful storms. And FEMA is supposed to be there to help them. That's where your tax dollars are supposed to go. But FEMA was ignoring them intentionally, saying, we're not knocking. They have Trump signs. Moving on. Now, FEMA has blamed one person for this, a woman called Marnie Washington. And Marnie has been accused of being, she's the one. We fired her. We got rid of her. We fixed the problem. FEMA is insisting. But Marnie is saying, that's not true. It's not just me. Listen to Marnie Washington. She did an interview with a fella called Roland Martin, and the two of them are chatting with each other over Skype. And here's what Marnie Washington has to say about what's happening at her agency that she was just fired from.
Stating that I was fired. They all alleged that these actions were made on my own recognizances and that it was for my own political advances. However, if you look at the record, there is what we call a community trend. And unfortunately, it just so happened that the political hostility that was encountered by my team, and I was on two different teams during this deployment, they just so happened to have the Trump campaign signage. FEMA always preaches avoidance first and then de-escalation. So this is not isolated. This is a colossal event of avoidance, not just in the state of Florida, but you will find avoidance in the Carolinas. Senior leadership will lie to you and tell you that they do not know. But if you ask the DSA crew leads and specialists what they are experiencing in the field, they will tell you. Demand for FEMA to give you those incident reports.
So it's not just Florida. It's also in North Carolina. And she said senior leadership at FEMA will lie to you about how extensive this is. I'm just following orders, says Marnie Washington. I was skipping Trump supporters because I was told to. This is avoidance. We're supposed to do this. And it's happening everywhere, she says. So FEMA's problems just got worse insofar as anybody's going to, call them to the carpet over all of this. Now, there are a number of places that have announced investigations, whether it be the United States House of Representatives, and, of course, Governor Ron DeSantis, whose state was directly affected. These are his residents that are discussed in this Daily Wire report. Here's Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody speaking to Newsmax about all of this.
I'm not going to leave it up to the federal government to do their own investigation. So this past weekend, Florida has already begun digging into this. We want to make sure that our emergency agency is looking into these details to making sure we have all of the information. We're seeking not only information from FEMA, but making sure if there are those within Florida who feel that they were overlooked or discriminated against because of their political views, that we have an understanding of that and that information. Because look, this is what folks have been saying all along, that this administration wasn't here to serve everyone, only a few. And so as we dig in, I think there's, we're going to find that this, in fact, did happen. We're already seeing it in some of the reports and the databases, and we'll follow up accordingly.
All right, so there you go. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody saying we're following up. We can't trust the federal government to conduct its own investigation into this. We're going to defend the people of Florida as they should, But one of the critical questions here is how far-reaching is it? How far-reaching is it? That FEMA official, the now fired FEMA official, Marnie Washington, she also said in that interview with Roland Martin that she still has access to her own login at FEMA. This is how bad they are at firing people. So they fire her, and yet they didn't really cut off her access. So she was sitting inside of her own access, I guess, yesterday, and she was describing, I think she was doing another media interview with some other left-wing host to discuss all of this. And she says she was sitting there watching it. She was watching her files be deleted, that someone was going through and deleting her files under her login. So she's logged into the system, and she's watching as boop, 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 files are being deleted. Why are they deleting files? And if you are a lawyer who's engaged in this, if you're the Attorney General of Florida, don't you think that would be highly relevant to your demands that the federal government preserve the evidence of what's going on here? Boop, boop, deleted. So once again, as always with so many of these things, a lot more questions than answers. But we've got some obvious evidence that the federal government was prejudiced against Trump supporters, and may have been doing it at a much more systemic level than just Marnie Washington. Marnie Washington ends up being the fall girl for this, but she says it's not just me. It's not just me. It's all over the place, and they're going to lie to you. The senior leadership will lie to you about this. And sure enough, she says they're also deleting all of my files right now as we speak. That's what's happening. Let's see here. I've also got some updates for you. Did you see the Veterans Day event yesterday that involved Kamala Harris and Jill Biden were placed directly next to each other at a Veterans Day event? And Jill has sunglasses on that are designed to keep you from being able to see her expression. They're massive. They're just covering up as much as she can of her face with sunglasses. And Kamala comes into the building, and there's video all over social media now showing this. And she sits down next to Jill. And before she sits down, she shakes hands with everyone except for Jill, who doesn't even acknowledge her. It is icy cold between Kamala Harris and Jill Biden at this Veterans Day event yesterday. Which is great. I just love it. I love the drama. So there's a massive fight of some kind going on between all of them. It's really, really very silly. But there they are. They're fighting between Jill and Kamala Harris. And then today there was a White House press briefing, and Coringe was asked about what it was like for Biden and Kamala to have their first lunch together today. Kamala went to the White House today, and they had all the White House staff stand outside and dutifully applaud like she had achieved something. Yay, Kamala, way to go. Way to go. That's only losers get a parade on the left. It's like unbelievable. So they're all out clapping. And here is Peter Doocy asking Coringe today, what was it like How awkward was it for Biden and Kamala to sit for lunch together today?
We know that today, a week after the election, President Biden and Vice President Harris had a private lunch. How awkward was that?
I don't even understand. Why would it be awkward?
Because the president got squeezed out for her, and then she kept him at arm's length, and then she lost, and now she's back.
Why would you characterize it as awkward? They have regular lunches. They meet and talk regularly. Why would you call it awkward?
I love how he's like, because the president got squeezed out, and then she was given the nomination, and then she lost. So, yeah, it seems like a very awkward situation between the two of them. And this is credit to Peter Doocy, because he's not playing the stupid game that the rest of the media played, which is, oh, Joe Biden just made a decision. He was like, you know what, I've had enough. I'm going to get out. Peter Doocy straight up says he got squeezed out. They tossed him from the race. They replaced him from Kamala. She's a loser. And so now the two of them have to sit together while Joe Biden is just staring at her. How awkward was this thing?
Why would you characterize it as awkward? They have regular lunches. They meet and talk regularly. Why would you call it awkward?
So there's no weirdness about the way that things have unfolded.
Did you see them? Did you see them together yesterday as well, when they honored our veterans and were together during the day, making sure that we didn't forget the brave men and women that fought for this country? Did you see them together yesterday? Did you see the show of force together?
Show of force.
This is
okay. There's a lot of ways to describe Joe Biden. Show of force is not one of them. Show of force. Did you see him walking on the beach in Delaware this weekend? He was sliding through the sand. He almost fell a half dozen times. And Jill, speaking of Jill, whoa, she is cold. She had no interest in helping her husband get across that sand. If your elderly grandfather was having trouble traversing sand, you would walk up to him, you would grip his arm, and you would help him because you're a decent person. Jill said, you're on your own. And I'd venture a guess that at some point they gave the Secret Service instruction too. Don't help him. Do not step in to give him assistance as he's clearly having trouble. Because what Secret Service agent's going to say, yeah, it's totally fine if he falls over on his face? None of them. They probably had to be told, do not assist him. And the reason for that, back when there was a campaign going on that had Joe Biden as the nominee, was probably that they wanted to fake it. They wanted to do a North Korean style, oh, he's so healthy and strong campaign. But once he's not the nominee, why do you care? Why are we even doing these stupid games? Just give the guy an arm. Help him. Jill doesn't. Why can't they get him one of those PVC pipe wheelchairs that they use at the beach? You ever see one of those? They try to wheel somebody across the sand. Oversized wheels. It's built of PVC pipes. You can push the guy across the beach. Oh, Grandpa Joe wants to stare at the waves. Here, let's bring him out. And then he's out there and drooling, but he's in a wheelchair. They can push him around. No help for old Joe. Joe's sliding through the sand, tripping over himself. It's one of the most difficult experiences of his life, going across the sand at that beach. So here's Corinne saying that it was a real show of force yesterday when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got together on Veterans Day for the troops, you say.
A force together. This is, look, I'm not even going to take the premise of the question. What I will say is the president and the vice president had lunch today. They've had lunch many times.
Wow.
They have,
riveting.
They communicate with each other regularly.
Amazing.
They had an opportunity to discuss the last 70 days or so of this administration.
Yes, and that's the part. Was it awkward?
How important it is to get things done for the American people. And that's their focus. That is genuinely their focus. Yes, Patsy.
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you, Corinne. That's so good. Meanwhile, so like Doocy's sitting there going, so only one of us is going to have a job here in a couple of months. One of the upsides here of the election being over and Trump winning is that all of the fakeness is dropping. Like, she's not even pretending to like Peter anymore. She's angry that she even has to call on him. She feels obliged because he works for a television network. He sits in the front row. But I wouldn't be surprised if she stops calling on Peter Doocy entirely. Why do we keep the charade going? Why? All right, let me go to the phones. I've got the wonderful Donna is calling in from Frederick. She's been waiting very patiently. Donna, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, Donna. Good old Donna. Donna, you there? Donna's been waiting.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't apologize.
distracted.
Donna's
My
been waiting for a
apologies.
while. No. It's all good. I know sometimes the hold time can take a while, but I'm glad you're here now, Donna. Go ahead.
Well, sometimes I forget I'm on the line because I'm listening so intently and doing my work. But just to discuss the situation with Trump's appointees,
Yeah.
I hope he picks people like Kash Patel, Rick Grinnell, Chris Miller. I think those people would be outstanding. And I truly feel like he is floating a lot of that out to see how the electorate feels about these possible nominees. So I think it's great. I think we have great days to look forward to.
You are of my, you kind of, or at least this is one of my theories. I'm not sure which one I'm adhering to yet, but you think that all of this stuff where the names are being leaked out in advance is an intentional effort by the Trump team to kind of float these names out and see how people react to them.
Absolutely. And I think it's working quite well because people, I'm sure they look at X in particular, and they get a pretty good, and they do their, they do their surveys, which Elon's done, and I think that's a fantastic way to find out where people stand. And as far as the rhinos, I think they're going to be a little bit surprised about how aware the people are with how they voted in the past and how they didn't support Trump with the 2020 election. I think those days for those people are numbered.
I just want to remind people, based on something Donna just said, she's so right about this. President Trump is the rare politician who does pay very close attention to the way voters feel about all of these issues, the people he's appointing. He really does care, actually, about that. So that's why if you ever find yourself in a position where you're like, oh, I hear Trump's about to do something, I don't think that's a great idea. Express it publicly. Feel free to do that because President Trump takes the input and then he makes a decision based on all of that. So I prefer that world rather than the one where we constantly have tyranny imposed upon us, Donna.
I do too. And everything President Trump and team does, in case people haven't noticed, it's constitutional. He's doing everything by the letter of the law.
Yeah.
And it's time people wake up and see the truth for what it actually is, because we're about to go on the journey of a lifetime. May get bumpy in between now and, January 20th or in there. But I think if we just hang on and stay the course and pay attention, we'll do ourselves a lot of good.
I love it. All right, Donna, thank you as always. Thanks for waiting and really appreciate your call.
It was fun. Thanks.
Tomorrow on the Chris Plant Show, the Democrats are plotting to form a shadow cabinet. They should call it the Confederate States. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
All right, President Trump just announcing 2 big picks for the White House just moments ago. They include John Ratcliffe. It will be the director of the CIA. John Ratcliffe, he says, from exposing fake Russian collusion to being a Clinton campaign operation to catching the FBI's abuse of civil liberties at the FISA court, John Ratcliffe has always been a warrior for truth and honesty with the American public. When 51 intelligence officials were lying about Hunter Biden's laptop, there was one, John Ratcliffe, telling the truth to the American people. For these and many other reasons, it was my great honor in 2020 to award John the National Security Medal, the nation's highest honor for distinguished achievement in the field of intelligence and national security. I look forward to John being the first person ever to serve in both of our nation's highest intelligence positions. He was the former director of national intelligence. He will be a fearless fighter for the constitutional rights of all Americans, he says. Okay, so there's that announcement. Also, the president has just announced that William Joseph McGinley, Bill McGinley, will be the White House counsel. That's the top attorney at the White House. That gets a hearty endorsement from Mike Davis. We like Mike. Mike's a great guy from the Article 3 Project. Mike says today, just moments ago, that Bill McGinley is a close friend, an outside counsel to the Article 3 Project. He's an excellent choice to serve as President Trump's White House counsel. He's tough, smart, he's fair. He already knows his way around the White House and the executive branch. He's ready on day one. Well, good. That makes another one who's ready on day one. We need them all to be for this incoming Trump administration. Some fun news to close out the program. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.